This creature right here is actually a fish. Well, not really, but you will see what I mean by that. We know that all animals are related, but some animals are more related than others. So by dividing animals into different phylums based on their common characteristics, we can get a picture of their family tree simply by judging on the classifications alone most of the time. Let's have some example here. We can see that the ping pong tree sponge and harp sponge are related to each other by their lack of body symmetry and true tissues as opposed to any other animal, whereas segmented worms have segments. So how can it be that this amorphous blob is related to us in any way? What holy mess was actually going on? To answer this question, I present you fun facts about Tunicates, and has evolution gone too far? Tunicata is a subphylum of Chordata, alongside Cephalochordata and Vertebrata. The name Tunicate derives from the Latin word tunica, tunic, a term that is also used to describe the smooth outermost layer of their skin made out of cellulose fibers, as a protection from random shenanigans happening in the seawater. But the strength of it varies quite a lot in different species depending on their lifestyles. As far as we know, there are no tunicate species that has ever adapted to a terrestrial environment, or even freshwater. All of its members, alive or extinct, live their life solely in seawater. Although the transparent bizarre appearance might give a false impression that these are cnidarians of some sort, or even sponges, but the truth is, tunicates are related to us vertebrates the most than to any other animal. One thing about chordates is that we all share a prominent feature called a notochord, at least in a point in life. That's what gives the phylum its name. Notochord can be seen as a primitive spine made out of cartilage between our digestive tract and the nerve cord. This structure is widely used by ancient chordates as a means of locomotion and structural support. As seen from this iron, even in modern chordates can also be seen to retain this very feature. For us humans, our notochord only exists in early embryonic development, with it getting replaced by bones gradually before birth, eventually becoming the vertebrae, while the rest of the notochord gets reduced to just the spinal disc, which are these cartilages connecting each vertebrae that allows them to be able to bend and move around. While tunicates bear a striking resemblance to a deformed jello more than anything else, sea squirt babies and larvaceans on the other hand does possess a notochord for tail movement, with the body overall looking like a baby fish or young amphibians in general. But even then, most of the larvae's internal structure does not rely on the presence of a notochord, and thus the majority portion of it is situated only inside the tail, as opposed to our spine that travels along the entire body. To the larvae, its sole purpose is just to assist their movement during the short amount of time when they still have a tail around. This is the reason tunicates are sometimes also referred as urochordates. And even in adult tunicates, even with the one half of their anatomy, two siphons can still clearly be seen. Those are the mouth and the butt, which is the main distinction between deuterostomes and, by extension, chordates, with some other animals that might get mistaken with it, like cnidarians. They have to poop out whatever they ate from their mouth instead before eating again, and sponges don't even have true tissues at all. Furthermore, the innards of a tunicate is not that far off comparing to us. It has an actual heart near its stomach and a system of blood vessels to transport stuffs around. But as tunicates do, they just have to make things weird. From time to time, the heart abruptly stops beating for a while, restarts itself, and ta-da! The blood is flowing in reverse direction just like that. This procedure will be done all over again after several minutes of beating, and we have no idea why they do this at all. As far as our understanding goes, Tunicates are the only animals to do this blood reverse thing. For now, the heart restarting is just a mystery. Most tunicate species are those belonging to the class of animals called ascidians, commonly known as sea squirts. These creatures are professionals at drinking seawater and can be very widespread, being found in coastal regions all over the world. But it's still gonna require some effort in terms of actually finding one. Competition is harsh in the sea. Having a family is just hard to afford. Upon hatching, baby sea squirts resembles other chordate members a lot more than their parents, like a tiny tadpole. However, these larvae do not have the luxury of those sophisticated sensory organs like us. Instead, they only have their hands on a fishtail powered by muscles surrounding the notochord, with a tiny makeshift brain in the head, and relying on simple eyes and their sense of gravity to have any clue about where they are going. This free swimming stage doesn't last long, however. If a larva successfully finds a nice boulder to latch on, the front-facing part of the head secretes a special glue to anchor down the rest of the body, in which case triggers a process called retrogressive metamorphosis, where the larva kinda eats away some of its internal organs, like the tail and the notochord inside, as to alter the body to better fit the adult lifestyle of a sessile filter feeder, while the already simple nervous system gets further reduced, leaving behind an even tinier cerebral ganglion between the siphons. Some species will use whatever remains of their brain to take action accordingly to stimuli, that being, well, squirting water. It's a sea squirt, what do you expect it to do? From this point on, the basic body plan of a living water filter is practically complete. It will try its very best to eat whatever scraps that could be found in the seawater for the rest of its life, happily ever after. The mouth and the butt of a sea squirt is heavily modified to become two siphons, with tons of cilia inside moving water continuously. This generates a water current carrying food particles right into the mucus lining its throat, produced by a little organ called endostal. This mucus functions like a coffee filter. It allows the water to flow right through, while the little scraps of food will get captured instead, in which case the mucus can just be while the excess water gets expelled from the butt siphon alongside poop. Like the notochord, the endostal is a built-in feature shared among chordates, originally used by our marine ancestors to produce mucus for filter feeding purposes. Its functionality can still be seen in primitive filter feeders like lanceolets and baby lampreys. But as time goes on, our vertebrate ancestors had moved on from this lifestyle ever since. And so the endostal gradually got repurposed to become, well, I think you have already guessed it. It became our thyroid. After latching on a rock and completing their metamorphosis, some species can sprout stolons from their base, which are these root-looking structures that hold the rest of the body tightly on uneven surfaces to further secure their position. Not just that, these stolons can actually extend outwards and grow a clone by budding. This form of asexual reproduction has made it possible to spawn adult sea squirts in a short amount of time if there's enough resources to spare, skipping the fertilization and larva stage entirely. Many species can even start a colony of their own right then and there, with each individual member of the colony being referred as a zooid. One of the many copyright infringement Tunicates done to the siphonophores. In some cases like the skeleton panda sea squirt, zooids are being formed further from each other, only connected by their stolons, resulting in each individual being easily distinguishable. Other colonial species, however, can combine all their tunic into a single girthy foreskin. Considering the ridiculously tiny effort sea squirts take to defend themselves, forming a colony made out of clones and quickly replacing lost members is a good use of their simple body plan and a great regenerative capability that comes with it. practically making other creatures impossible to get a KO on them. The term stolon is also shared by the portion of stems found in plants, which similarly spreads outwards parallel to the ground to sprout clones further from the original plant. During times of boringness, sea squirts can get a little squirty. Many sea squirts are hermaphrodites, having both sets of genitalia at the same time once they reach sexual maturity. This is quite an exclusive feature among chordates. Having a body like this with neighbors that are just themselves, they gotta be a bit more creative to reach the other colony and get freaky. No, who am I kidding? They just do broadcast spawning, which is just spewing their essence everywhere into the sea and pray that something happens eventually and not just become free protein. Those that are lucky enough to meet each other will be fertilized into a zygote that will drift across the sea to places far beyond its parents and start a new generation. Look at this picture on Wikipedia. It just goes, predatory tunicates live in the depths ranging from 200 to 1000 meters under the surface, the twilight zone, which is just deep enough to block most of the sunlight shining above during daytime, making photosynthesis pretty much redundant and forcing those animals left adapt to their life in total darkness. To actually survive in this piss-poor environment of the sea, with no plant, no fish, no nothing, the predatory tunicate too evolved a low metabolic rate to accommodate for the scarcity of food. The tunicate itself is a sea squirt, but it had long ago given up the filter-feeding lifestyle of its ancestors. Instead, it opts to catch larger, unexpected prey with its comically large siphon repurposed as a mouth. During resting, the siphon stays open like a Venus flytrap. Any unfortunate creature bumping into the siphon that is big enough will then trigger the tunicate to shut it off and slowly digest the prey inside with enzymes, while the waste get pooped out through the smaller siphon on the other side. Even though salps are the minority among tunicates, they are perhaps the most recognizable member of the bunch, being seen frequently due to their pelagic nature and the enormous colony they can make. A subcolony consists of individual zooids interconnected to each other, similar to that of a sea squirt, and in many ways even more so resembles a siphonophore. Salp belong to the class Thalassia, which consists of tunicate planktons. Yep, planktons. Even though the colony itself can reach up to the length of a baleen whale, it doesn't really have a means to propel itself. They are able to push water through them during feeding that generates motion, but the resulting movement is mostly just a byproduct more than anything. The colony simply drifts along the ocean current just like any other plankton do. The sexual reproduction part of salps is so extraordinarily confusing. I am not even gonna pretend as if I do understand what in the world is actually going on here. Well, I'm gonna try my best to explain it anyway. So, when a papa salp and a mama salp really likes each other, the fertilized female will then give birth to a solitary asexual salp, an oozoid rather than the larva seen on sea squirts. This oozoid further matures over time to procreate a chain of female blastozoids. It is at this stage of life that salps form the iconic colony where the zooids become sexually mature. One fascinating thing to note is that salps are sequential hermaphrodites. They do not possess both functioning genitals at the same time like sea squirts. Instead, after a female salp gave birth to the asexual oozoid, it develops into a male, losing the traits of a female and subsequently completing the life cycle as it fertilizes the others. During times where resources were plentiful, salps can explode in numbers and fill up the entire sea. It might look kinda sketchy to swim nearby, but salps doesn't have the stinging cells of cnidarians alike, so they are pretty much harmless in contact with our skin. Don't try that with a siphonophore though. After all the planktons are gobbled up, these salps will return to their original numbers and the bloom ends. Also a member of the class Thylacia, pyrosomes are closely related to salps, which can also be seen through their similar lifestyle. The term pyrosome derives from Greek, translating to fire body. This may refer to the ability of the zooid to produce light. Each zooid of a pyrosome colony is even more so interconnected with each other than that of salps and sea squirts, making larger colonies look like an Alaskan bullworm and smaller ones a pickle, a sea pickle. So yes, Mojang is in fact onto something when they made this. Though the one in the games is most likely to be sea squirts. Anyway, pyrosomes essentially take the pelagic filter-feeding lifestyle and one-up it to an extreme. The zooid of a pyrosome is significantly smaller than that of its salp cousin, having its body size in the millimeters, barely visible to our naked eye even. Each one of them acting like the choanocytes of a sponge, sucking water in with countless tiny pores and let the waste flow out from one gigantic gap. Okay, now this is getting infuriating. Our noble Chordate ancestors went all their way for immeasurable adaptations to the ever-changing world since the Precambrian era. Notochord, central nervous system, endostyle, gill slits. You guys return to being a sponge? You what? If sea squirts revolutionized the body plan of ancient chordates, whereas salps and pyrosomes reform those of sea squirts even further, then Larvaceans will reject that ideology from the very start. The body of a Larvacean is very different from other Tunicates, having all ancestral chordate features intact throughout its lifetime. At first, many believe Larvaceans are Tunicates that lose their ability to undergo metamorphosis, and as a result, adopted a life retaining their larvae features. Basically, tadpoles that never grew into a frog. Despite that, further studies suggest that Larvaceans to be the first lineage to break off from the rest of the group, with sea squirts developing the whole AFK lifestyle on their own. Being the weirdest of the gang, or maybe the most normal of them all, Larvaceans do not wear tunic as a protective layer. Instead, they build massive structure made from mucus to live inside, consisting of an emergency exit and food filters, a house, in which the Larvacean in the middle wiggles its tail to generate water currents, vacuuming all the food particles along the filters right into the mouth. Oftentimes, the filter can get clogged, where the Larvacean just abandons it several times a day. The house full of organic materials then slowly drifts to the seafloor as marine snow, providing tons of food to the deep sea environment and completing the oceanic carbon cycle. Well, that was something. No worries, Larvacean can rebuild it all over in no time. And also, they don't live very long, only about a week or less after hatching, where they will release their essence into the sea and die. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. For a long time, the origin of Tunicates remained clouded and unknown, since they don't have much hard tissue to be preserved, especially in the adult stage. The body will most likely rot away or get eaten after death, leaving nothing behind to be fossilized. However, soft tissue can also create fossils, albeit on a much rarer occasion. In an event where the tunicate gets quickly buried by large amounts of sediments, the body can still be replaced by minerals over time as it decays, leaving an impression in the sedimentary rock it formed. It is by this that we are able to trace the history of Tunicates all the way back to the Cambrian period, to the very start of the Phanerozoic Eon, where most animal lineages first emerged, the dawn of animals, if you will. Most notably, Schenkoclava, the club-shaped solitary tunicate with length ranging from 2 to 4 cm, and Megasiphon with two enormous siphons compared to the rest of the body, which is about the size of a thumbprint, while other structures are more or less identical to a sea squirt. Any fossil formed in that time period is very unlikely to remain to this day. 500 million years is a very long time for a bunch of geological activities to happen nearby. The fossils can be crushed, eroded by water, or melted in lava. And for a single tunicate to become a fossil is itself a miracle. These specimens we have on our hand indicate that not only do they live in that time period, they thrived. It's just fascinating to think about these seemingly helpless creatures, an evolutionary dead end, to just vibe in the sea with Pikaia and Opabinia, staying with us through all the time past. The history of these little-known animals dates back so inconceivably far back in time there even is a possibility to which our fishy ancestors descended from a lineage of tunicates that stays being a larva, like Larvaceans, eventually diverged from other tunicates altogether. The simple life of tunicates is a tale as old as time. But our story did not end there. There is something even before that. Year 1946. Geologist Rex Brigg was sent to inspect abandoned mines of Ediacaran hills in Australia, where he found fossils even deeper than the rock layer where Cambrian fossils reside, bearing no resemblance to any living animal. He tried to present his findings to the academics, but no one believed him. The Cambrian period is the furthest back we can find animals at that time, and even then, we still only have a handful of Cambrian fossils. The idea of a soft-bodied animal fossil even before the Cambrian making its way to us is just too unlikely. Ediacaran was ultimately recognized as a legit geological period in 2004 by the IOGS. Since then, several Ediacaran fossils were acknowledged from other parts of the world, including those found before 1946, and Rex Brigg will have an animal found in the hills, Spriggina, to be named after him, in honor of his discoveries. Ediacaran biota refers to any animals from that time period, not exclusive to the ones found in the hill. Being this far back in time kinda breaks biology for the animals at least, like the time before the Big Bang. Remember Spriggina just now? It may have looked related to the fan-favorite trilobite with its similar head and segmented body, but it's most likely not the case. Unlike most animals, including ones of the Cambrian period, Spriggina alongside many other Ediacaran animals are not bilaterally symmetrical. Instead, having its body arranged in a glide reflectional symmetry, like this leaf pattern, or footprints, is the TikTok trend of animals at that time. The concept of a predator isn't even invented yet. Everyone just filters seawater and eats whatever they found in there. Evolution for animals is just getting started. Yet, just before the transition into the Cambrian period, there were fossils to be found suspected to be basal tunicates just before the tail end of Ediacaran, with their body types not far off from modern sea squirts, making them one of, if not the earliest chordate fossils to be found ever. Could Tunicates truly be what gave rise to vertebrates? Us? Well, what's the catch? Chordate is an animal discovered in 2017, with fossils found dating back to the beginning of Cambrian, once presumed bearing resemblance to the earliest ancestors of chordates or even deuterostomes. Chordate have these tiny holes above what looks like a mouth. They were thought to be primitive mouths used to draw in water containing food particles, expelling water from its original mouth, which would become the anus for its deuterostome descendants. Despite all that, recent studies have since determined that the holes to actually be spines that broke off, being mistaken for mouths. And so, Chordate was kicked out of the family just as fast as it joined. Similarly, information regarding basal tunicates in the Ediacaran period, including their connection with sponges and cnidarians, are yet to be cleared, with how rare these fossils can be and how different things are this far back in time. As of right now, the true face of our earliest ancestors are yet to be acknowledged. Sea squirts are considered a delicacy in countries like Chile, Japan, and Korea. They can easily be farmed on a large scale due to the simple lifestyle and fast regeneration. The tunic is usually discarded alongside some of its innards during preparation, and from what I can gather, it apparently has a soggy, flaccid texture and smells like fish. A lot of animals are able to steal version-exclusive features from other living beings by eating them and not digesting the things they need. However, all tunicates made their tunics from cellulose they made themselves, including the house of Larvaceans. They are the only animals known to be able to do this, as cellulose is mostly something from plants and microbes. Make no mistake, these tunics are still living animal tissues with blood vessels and nerves running around. And as to how they managed to get their hands on the genes necessary to produce cellulose, oh well, they just stole it from a random bacteria, most likely through a virus infection. During genetic experiment with fruit flies, a specific gene is turned off artificially, which causes fruit fly embryos to develop spikes all over the place. This gene is later dubbed hedgehog gene, and it played a vital role in embryonic development. Since its discovery, we have found 3 homologous genes in vertebrates, in which case are named desert hedgehog, Indian hedgehog, and sonic hedgehog. A potential inhibitor to the protein it produced is also found and is later be named robotnik kinin. When scientists do silly stuff like this, it's always funny. Well, that wraps it up for my silly video about sea squirts. I do not expect the video to take this long to make. Tunicates are such an underrated animal. They are not very memorable in the grand scheme of things, there being many other animals that could be just as awe-inspiring if not better than them, and yet they can be beautiful in their own way. So yeah, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. My next video will be about shipworms. Stay tuned!